This week's update is available. Let us take a very quick look at where the pieces are currently standing before we project forward, because the board is incredibly tense. Right now, Willow is backed into a terrifying corner, framed with fabricated evidence at the PCPD, desperately reaching out to Alexis for a legal miracle while Harrison Chase circles the wreckage, potentially ready to play the hero again. Simultaneously, Jen Sidwell is applying unbearable pressure right inside Willow's own home. Over in France, Anna is battling her profound trauma from her captivity, quietly preparing a highly risky countermove against the looming dangerous shadow of Ross Cullum. Meanwhile, Dante and Lulu are desperately flying toward Tortola to rescue Rocco, completely unaware they might be leading a nightmare directly to a highly vulnerable Brit. In the darker corners of town, Ethan has forcefully dragged Ava to Sunny, who fully intends to use her as bait in a deadly trap for Sidwell. And while Trina is fiercely drawing boundaries with Curtis and Portia, and Gio and Emma enjoy a fleeting summer moment by the pool, the younger generation is mobilizing. Jocelyn is aggressively clashing with Cassius at Windermere, and Danny and Charlotte are actively scheming to take down Cullum. That is the board. Now, let us look ahead. Looking forward, we have to consider the very real possibility that Dante and Lulu's desperate rescue mission to Tortola is going to trigger a catastrophic chain reaction. Who actually benefits if Ross Cullum tracks them down using his WSB surveillance network? Certainly not Britt, who is already in grave danger, collapsing from an illness that we now suspect might be a treatable condition, maliciously masked as Huntington's disease. If Cullum descends upon that island hideout, there is a massive chance that Dante and Lulu will be completely outgunned and outmaneuvered. The bigger consequence may be the psychological destruction of Rocco. Imagine the profound trauma if Rocco watches his parents accidentally lead a ruthless double agent right to the woman who has been risking her life to protect him. Rocco could entirely turn his back on Dante and Lulu, blaming them for whatever tragic fate befalls Britt. This could lead to a future where Rocco becomes deeply radicalized, alienating himself from his family, and perhaps even seeking out someone like Sunny or a darker path to exact his own revenge against the intelligence community. And while that island nightmare unfolds, what happens next may be an absolute disaster for Willow. If you look at her situation, she is trapped between the PCPD frame job orchestrated by Brooklyn and Lucy and the terrifying physical presence of Jen Sidwell in her living room. What if Willow realizes that Alexis cannot legally save her from fabricated GPS evidence, and she makes a literal deal with the devil? There is a chance that Willow promises to harbor Sidwell or even finance his escape in exchange for him using his lethal underworld connections to eliminate the fake evidence against her. This would fundamentally change Willow from a victim into a willing accomplice to an international fugitive. If Harrison Chase discovers this, his heroic desire to rescue her will instantly evaporate, replaced by a bitter realization that he has been played by both his wife and the woman he tried to protect. The story could be heading toward a complete implosion of the Quartermaine and Corinthos family dynamics, with Willow standing at the center of a criminal conspiracy. Furthermore, Anna's risky move in the French clinic could act as the ultimate catalyst in this scenario. What if Anna decides that the only way to expose Cullum is to fake her own death or stage a massive security breach at the facility? She knows Cullum is obsessed with controlling the narrative. If Anna goes rogue, she might inadvertently pull Valentine back into the crosshairs, forcing him to abandon his mission with the mysterious contact Z in Geneva. This creates a terrifying vulnerability at Windermere. With Valentine distracted, Carly's desperate rescue mission for Jocelyn could end in absolute disaster. Carly might find herself locked in that very same cell with Liesel, Obrecht, and Jocelyn, leaving Sunny completely isolated as his family vanishes one by one. The ripple effects of Anna's trauma-induced gamble could literally leave Port Charles defenseless against Cullum's grand master plan. But let us pivot and look at a completely different trajectory, a future that completely flips the power dynamics of the entire canvas. What if the real game changer isn't happening in Tortola or France, but right there in Sunny's gallery with Ava Jerome? Ethan has dragged Ava into the lion's den, and Sunny fully intends to use her as the ultimate bait to lure Jen Sidwell into a lethal trap. But Ava is no one's pawn. If that happens, What if Ava secretly flips the script? Imagine a scenario where Ava, feeling entirely cornered and resentful of Sunny's forceful, dictatorial tactics, manages to get a secure message to Sidwell. She warns him about the trap. In this future, Ava and Sidwell form an unholy secret alliance. Who benefits here? Ava regains her absolute power and potentially eliminates Sunny as a threat to her custody and freedom, while Sidwell gets the upper hand on the man actively trying to kill him. This path would change everything. If Sidwell is tipped off by Ava, he doesn't just avoid Sunny's trap, he turns it around into an ambush. We could see a future where Sunny is the one caught off guard, leaving his entire empire vulnerable to a hostile takeover. And how does this connect to the rest of the board? Well, if Sunny is neutralized, the protection around people like Laura and Lucas vanishes instantly. Furthermore, Sidwell could use his newfound leverage to completely take over the Windermere hostage situation from Cassius Phazon. Think about it. Cassius is already cracking under the immense pressure, desperate to maintain his fake Nathan facade just long enough to say goodbye to James West. If Sidwell storms Windermere with Ava's backing, Cassius is either executed for his incompetence or forced to go on the run, leaving Jocelyn, Liesel, and potentially Carly at the absolute mercy of a man who has zero moral boundaries. The story could be heading toward a dark reign where Ava and Sidwell control Spoon Island, utilizing Cullum's stolen cold fusion intelligence to hold the entire city, and perhaps the WSB, hostage. It would be a villainous power couple, the likes of which we haven't seen in decades, completely rewriting the hierarchy of Port Charles. Now, let us explore the most unexpected possibility, the wild card. The scenario that almost nobody is talking about right now, but would be absolutely electrifying to watch unfold on our screens. We have Danny Morgan and Charlotte Cassadine actively plotting a counteroffensive against Ross Cullum. These are kids, right? But they are the legacy of Jason Morgan, Valentine, Cassadine, and Lulu Spencer. What if the ultimate downfall of this highly trained, deeply corrupt WSB director comes at the hands of the younger generation? In this third future, Danny and Charlotte don't just sabotage a minor plan, they orchestrate a massive, sophisticated digital heist. They could use Gio and Emma's innocent pool party as the perfect, idyllic distraction. While everyone is focused on the summer fun and the splashing water, Danny and Charlotte hack into Cullum's highly secure servers, downloading the cold fusion data and broadcasting Cullum's treason to every intelligence agency on the planet. But here is where it gets incredibly compelling and dangerous. Trina Robinson has just demanded complete distance from Curtis and Portia. She is seeking independence, focusing entirely on her premiere and her own life. What if Trina's path to independence places her exactly in the wrong place at the worst possible time? As Danny and Charlotte initiate their cyber attack, Cullum panics and tries to flee through the city, only to cross paths with an isolated Trina. If Cullum takes Trina hostage in a desperate bid to escape the authorities, the entire dynamic shifts. Suddenly, Curtis and Portia's family drama is completely eclipsed by a life or death hostage crisis. And who steps up to save her? Not the police, but perhaps an entirely unexpected savior, like Cassius Phazon, who decides that his final act before fleeing Port Charles won't be just saying goodbye to James, but sacrificing his own life to stop Cullum and save an innocent girl. This future would redeem the fake Nathan in a tragic, heroic blaze of glory, completely shocking the audience and leaving a permanent legacy that Nina and James could actually be proud of. It is wild, it is out of left field, but it fits perfectly into the tragic, heroic undertones of the show. If you ask me, when I look at all these moving pieces and try to find the path that feels most likely to happen, I keep coming back to the idea that the Tortola rescue mission is destined to be a spectacular, heartbreaking failure. The path that makes the most sense is the one where Dante and Lulu's desperate, loving intentions pave the road to absolute hell. The writers have been steadily building this emotional reunion between Rocco and his parents, but in the world of Port Charles, reunions are rarely simple or painless. I genuinely believe that Ross Cullum is too smart, too resourceful, and too deeply entrenched in the WSB surveillance network to just let Dante and Lulu fly to the British Virgin Islands unnoticed. The tragedy of Rocco turning against his parents because their arrival inadvertently causes Brit's capture or apparent demise provides months, if not years, of rich, agonizing psychological storytelling. Furthermore, this path perfectly intertwines with Anna's storyline in France. I strongly suspect that Anna's risky move will be an attempt to draw Cullum's attention away from Tortola, but she will be just a few hours too late. The emotional devastation of Dante realizing that his seasoned police instincts failed him, and Lulu realizing that her desperation to be a mother again only put her son in the crosshairs of a global terrorist, is exactly the kind of high-stakes, character-driven drama this show thrives on. If you ask me, we need to prepare ourselves for a very dark, emotionally exhausting chapter for the Falconeri and Spencer families. The collateral damage of their actions is going to be immense, and it will fundamentally fracture the trust between the characters we love. But guys, we cannot stop there, because the future is a constantly expanding map. If that heartbreaking scenario in Tortola actually happens, what will be the next shockwave? Think about the long-term fallout that will echo through the coming years. If Brit is taken by Cullum, or if she seemingly perishes because the stress exacerbates her mysterious illness, the shockwave hits Port Charles like a meteor. We are talking about a complete, unhinged vengeance tour. You would have Dante stripping off his badge, abandoning the law entirely to hunt down Cullum outside the bounds of justice. You would have Liesel Obrecht, once she inevitably escapes or is rescued from her Windermere cell, unleashing a level of biological or psychological warfare against the WSB that makes Caesar Faison look like a complete amateur. The bigger consequence may be the complete and total dismantling of the WSB as we know it. If Valentine successfully exposes Cullum to Z in Geneva, and it is revealed that Cullum's actions led to civilian casualties in Tortola and the illegal imprisonment of citizens like Jocelyn and Liesel, the international intelligence community will collapse under the weight of the scandal. We could see a future where the WSB is entirely defunded and disbanded, creating a massive power vacuum in the global underworld. And who fills that vacuum? Jens Sidwell. If Sidwell survives Sunny's trap, perhaps with Ava's treacherous help, he is perfectly positioned to step into the void left by the WSB. What happens next may be the transformation of Port Charles from a city dealing with local mobsters into ground zero for an international syndicate war. The story could be heading toward a reality where our favorite characters are no longer just fighting for their families, but fighting for the very survival of their city against forces with limitless global resources. This is not just about a hit and run or a hostage situation anymore. This is the prologue to a total war. And honestly, I cannot wait to see how they try to survive it.
Goodbye. Please like, subscribe, and comment on the GH Spoilers Daily channel.